I'm here with Zori, who is just coming to the end of coaching training that's been going the last 6 months. And I want to talk with her to help give the listener a better understanding of the training and also for me to deepen into what it's like on the other side of it. And maybe we get into some themes that are prominent in the training. I'd love to know how it's been for you and if there's like one thing that stands out the most for you about how you've experienced it or what's happened in it or how your coaching has evolved.
Hmm. Thank you, John. I'm noticing some excitement and a little bit of anxiety being here. And it feels connected to, how deeply I care about this work and about communicating well, really the value of what I have received from you and from the team of Transformational Connection. And yeah, it's hard to put my finger on that one thing. That one thing. It feels like there's several threads that have been alive for me throughout and that have continued to evolve. One feels like really a thread of trust in the present moment and in the connection with my clients in a way where it's like, okay, there's nowhere to get to actually. Like I can just be here with them and not go a few steps further into the process, like just really meet them where they are.
Can we just
Um,
pause there a second?
yeah.
Because I'm like, that's actually, when you describe that, I'm like, that's pretty wild.
Mm,
There's some way that even though we're in a coaching session with someone and probably being paid to do that, there's this way of deeply surrendering to the present moment at the heart of it.
mhm,
And there's more to it, perhaps, or you could look at other lenses of like all the training that we've done and work on ourselves. But
mhm,
still, like when it comes down to it, we're really letting go in a particular way into the present moment and seeing where that is going to take
mhm,
us. And
mhm.
and that's profound as well as like in a way, how could you do that?
Right.
Does that resonate or how is it for you?
Yeah. I feel like for me, it feels like a practice actually. It's like every time I show up to the work with people, it feels like there's these layers of, oh, here, like I'm holding on to something, that I might want it to be a certain way, or I might want it to go somewhere, or I might want to really make sure this person feels cared for, or whatever it is. And really continuing to notice that and take that step back and take that step back and like be in that space of like nothing needs to be happening here. And from there's just so much wonder and amazement at what life is naturally bringing forward. And that for me is radically different from anything else I've seen when it comes to coaching. It's even brought a little bit of a question of like, is coaching really the right name for what we're doing?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I've
yeah.
like I'm talking with one of my friends who runs a coaching organization at the moment and about the idea of beyond coaching.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure what I think about that because I really want to honor the beauty of coaching. And yet it seems like through this coaching, we discover something that's bigger than that as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. And for me, I guess the other thread that I was going to mention that keeps it connected to coaching is the thread of desires, of exploring desires with the client. That for me feels different than intentions. Just in my own system, oftentimes when I think about intentions, it's like, oh, I'm gonna like decide that's where I want to go.
Right.
Whereas desires feels more like, oh, I'm sinking deeper into my system and I'm finding deeper and deeper layers of like what I'm really longing for. And then somehow being able to see another do that and knowing how precious that is to me and receiving that and experiencing it through the coaching has been huge in my world.
Right, and I think that that's like the two strongest elements of this coaching methodology is the presence and the surrender, but then it's also as the coach supporting the client to really get in touch with what they're most wanting, what they're desiring, what they're longing for in their life, and how that's not always easily accessible for people.
Mm-hmm.
And just
Mm-hmm.
getting in touch with that is very rich
Mm-hmm.
for all of us. And then once we have that, then it's like, oh, what might be getting in the way of that? Or like, are we even open to that coming into our life? Or do we have like
Mm-hmm.
prior
Mm-hmm.
commitments on a deeper level that don't really want those things to come into our life, and
Mm-hmm.
to explore what I would say through the lens of wholeness, where it's like they're not necessarily a victim to something. It's like there's a way that they're participating with that in most circumstances, and like how can we draw that out? And
Yeah, that reminds me of a moment I can remember very vividly of a few weeks ago, months ago actually now, um, where I was in one of the group calls and I was going through a really difficult time in my intimate life with my partner. And I remember back then, like just coming in to the call, and I think it was you actually that asked me, what are you wanting? So there was this kind of the whole kerfuffle of everything I was with, and then you were like, what are you actually wanting? And you stayed with me in that, and I remember back then, like just in a very like yeah conflictual time, I felt like there was just this like deeper dropping into my heart, and it's like, oh my god, I'm just longing for peace right now. And it felt like a journey to get there, but once I got there, actually things became so much clearer. It didn't feel like I need to know anything or I need to decide anything right now, and it was just like, oh, I just need to stay true to that in the way that I engage here. And and that completely transformed my relationship and the way I was orienting in it. I showed up with that, and that interesting integration of like, oh yeah, I want peace, and I'm also like, yeah, just like there was this sort of like, I'm not gonna in the name of peace try to settle for something that is not that. It's like there was something of like just that deeper level of commitment that was, yeah, just sent out a ripple through my entire life.
yeah, and it's so simple in a way.
Mm.
Is there more on any of these themes, or I? But I think we were still on your first thread, maybe. Oh no, we got to the second thread.
Mm. Mm.
I can say
Some,
if you don't.
sure.
I'd love to hear from you, but
I I have one. I have one. Um, Another thread feels connected to commitment. Um, there's something in even like the way we were invited to practice, working with clients, trial clients for 6 sessions each, that both felt clear, and it also felt like, oh, like there is a commitment here and there is space actually to deepen and to grow and to explore. And I could feel through that time that we had those 6 weeks with each of those people, like just a deepening of intimacy that was allowing for more and more to come. And it was, in a way, like witnessing that for me personally felt very important, because I feel like oftentimes I've erred on this side of like just keeping things open and allowing for the movement as it wants to happen. And I think there's something important about that, but also it's important for me to be in touch with my own desire for, oh yeah, like that's how I would like to work. I would like to work in a space of deeper commitment with people.
Mm.
And I want to bring that forward. I want to stay true to that. I don't yeah, there's another big thread that that I would like to address, but like it's kind of like there's all kinds of ways in which I've been, yeah, just sort of orienting to, oh, what does the client want? Maybe they want to start here, maybe they want to do that. You know, that sort of movement that actually over time in our work together, I started to understand, oh, that's actually me looking for love.
Mm.
I'm coming into this connection with the client with an intention to be of service to that. There is a little girl here that I'm bringing along that I haven't been aware of. That's here and is actually looking to receive love from the person I'm here in theory to serve. And that's been huge for me. Understanding that, seeing the impact that has had on my ability to stay with clients, to retain clients in my practice from before. And yeah, so I just really want to appreciate the capacity of the container to also bring forth these deeper layers that we might not even know are there and are a big part of what we're experiencing in our clients' work.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. It's amazing to hear you kind of bringing in your power, and I know that's been a theme in your clarity, and like this is what I want, and like your leadership in that way, and leading, like, or at least setting a context for, well, this is what I would like, and then yeah, people getting a lot from that,
Mhm.
and it's yeah, like the noticing of like, oh, what was happening before was coming from a need for love. I mean, I'm just continually confronted with those kind of things.
Mhm.
And this idea of beyond coaching, one thing I've noticed recently is how much my kind of anxious attachment, like I've been more on the avoidant kind of secure side, but more recently I've been tracking like subtle anxious attachment that shows up with almost everyone, and
Mhm.
how I use that through that sensitivity. I actually use that to really be able to sense the other person and be able to give really powerful coaching. But,
Mhm.
but what I've realized is it's like I could make that more about them and I'm kind of coaching them, but actually there's a person here that is having some anxiety in relation to the connection. And I've learned
Mhm.
to bring that more just from a personal point of view, because that actually feels more true. It's like less strategic, or even manipulative's maybe going a bit far, because I do think I can serve people still
Mhm.
the way. But there's something feels more honest and truthful about like actually revealing like, oh, here me as a person, there's this anxiety about the security,
Mhm.
and that does mirror the thing that I was trying to show them back to them anyway, typically, but it makes it more human and more real. And yeah,
Mhm.
that's why I'm like, I still feel like this can serve as a coach. I still feel like in integrity in a coaching, in my role as coach. And yet I'm really revealing deeper and deeper parts of myself in this connection, or like that's a big piece of it. And then that leads to this transformational connection opportunity more.
Mhm. I love that. I love that, and definitely resonates over here. And yeah, just reminds me of even 2 days ago, I was sitting with a client, and there was something of, as he was sharing about um yeah, this little boy that was present there for him. I was like, oh, like immediately there's this impulse of like, I'm not now going to come and care for your little boy. I'm like, and I'm like, that's happening. And then I'm like, the moment I name that, I can actually lean back from it and meet him differently. And he felt so much relief. And it was just amazing to see, like he was like, oh my God, that's like, oh, like that's my entire life of relationships, and just that kind of connection that mirrors back to them something of what they've been experiencing, actually through me simply being aware of like, oh, this is an energy that's moving here, and it's not like, oh, I'm supposed to get rid of it in order to be connected to this person, but it's like having the courage to feel it and to reveal it, which can be so scary sometimes also. So scary.
Yeah, and I wonder about that because I'm thinking if I was a more kind of conventional coach and I heard something like this, I'd be like, no way, like that's bringing myself in, or that, like, what if I bring my mess in and what's the client going to think about that?
Mm,
And yet I don't have any worry about that, or very little worry about that. Maybe because I kind of context that with the client, or they've been
mm,
used to transformational connection, so they get into it. But I have a quite a deep trust, and you seem to. I wonder if you have anything to say about that. Like, why is this not like terrible coaching, and we're just interfering with a client with our
yeah,
mess? And
yeah, yeah. It's honestly, it feels like yeah, like one of those edges I imagine that I will continue holding as I go, like something
yeah,
that I continue exploring and learning about.
right,
um because it feels like a very important one, because for me there's something of that line of like, what do I choose to share and what do I choose to keep to myself? That is like, there is no formula about that. There is no like, oh, that's the right way, like that's what I always do. There's something of like, oh yeah, like I, the more I can trust those boundaries that I hold with myself, the more I can actually reveal what needs to be revealed when the time arrives for that to happen. um, which I think is, yeah, just that has been another huge threat for me. It's like learning where those lines are, and being in relationship with them as a present moment practice, rather than something that I come in with and it's like, oh, these are the things I do and these are the things I don't do.
right.
um, which have, that has its place too, and there's definitely an element of that, but that, for me it's like this other kind of boundary feels even more important.
Yeah, and I like you speaking to the ongoing kind of edge exploration, because as confident I am from just deeply being myself as the coach and seeing it being super transformational for the client, there's still edges with that of like, is this the right thing to reveal? Like, is my tiredness now like really in service, or and yeah, and that's what makes it ongoingly interesting.
Yeah, which is also another edge for me, which is like there's this sense of responsibility in like, okay, I'm showing up here and this person is trusting me, and like opening this deep experience and sharing it with me. So there's this sort of like, oh my God, like I really want to make sure I show up, and the way that my perfectionism can come into that, and and somehow again like being in relationship with that, and being with that kind of, oh yeah, that has its place, but can I lean back and hold it and hold that person along with it? And yeah, just something of where also like, where does my responsibility actually lie here? um and that's another edge and inquiry for me that I'm living with.
Yeah, and that makes me think of like, in a way I feel a responsibility to the client to like have my skin in the game, to be like not hiding behind a role, to be
Mhm.
skillfully transparent.
Mm, mm,
I feel that's actually like a responsibility to show up authentically while I'm coaching, because
mm,
otherwise, yeah, I might be serving on one level, but I'm not serving on another level.
mhm, mm. I'm curious about that skin in the game. Like, can you speak more about that? How you bring that in your own practice?
Yeah, I mean that anxious attachment example is it's like when once that kind of awareness comes to me, it's like it's less truthful not to bring that.
Mm-hmm.
And there could be exceptions, like depending on where a client is, that I just think like, yeah, this isn't serving to bring this right now.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, that kind of surrender that will typically happen while we're in the coaching role, it feels like a deeper responsibility. I don't want to, yeah, hide behind the role or just kind of act like I know things that I don't. Um, yeah, or just go through the motions
Mm-hmm.
when if I'm really engaging, like there aren't any emotions to go through. It's like here's another unique human being who's having this thing and that will bring up a resonance in me. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can serve them because of what I've learned to embody, and we can go through that. Beautiful. Maybe it's a similar resonance, and we kind of explore that theme together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to play it all on the side of just connection because there are things like, you know, I've spent 15, 20 years integrating anger in myself, and then I've spent years researching that, and I've worked with thousands of people, and I've seen the patterns of how this works, and I've had loads of training, and that definitely supports me when I'm working with a client where you know, I can sense the anger that's coming in
Mm-hmm.
the body language, and then I can speak to that. And so there's all these areas of expertise that you can develop as a coach that we try to support through the training, and that but all of that can fit in within this authentic present
Mm-hmm.
coaching that feels connective, down to earth, human, and surrendered, in that it's like, yeah, it's like putting faith in something greater than just the two of us here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm with listening to you is like you say, that faith in something greater than the two of us here. I feel actually connects to that feeling of what, yeah, again, like what is responsibility? Like it's me responding to whatever is here in this moment. And then what I feel is even more interesting to me, having gone through this experience with you, is like what informs that response. Where does that response come from? Is there like a kind of a space of wholeness from which I can respond to the person in front of me, or is there a part that is responding that maybe is actually excluding certain more instinctive and natural ways I might be with them? Like, for example, for me, you know, the interplay between this like looking for love and the way that I orient towards that
Right.
can mean being very soft and welcoming and understanding, and sometimes not bringing something that might be more edgy, that might be more relational, that might be more like, oh, I'm feeling some discomfort here, and having that kind of courage, because like I just tend to lean into to this part of me when I'm responding. So then it's like starting to really understand and see that, and you know, in a way come back to that. You know, I like to think of it as a natural place inside from which that response happens, that is not the wounded space, that is the space of wholeness.
Right, exactly. And that speaks to this other premise for the course that I feel like everyone has an innate ability to serve another human.
Mhm.
That's natural to them. And rather than giving too many frameworks of how you should coach in this training, it's more like how can we nurture that genius that's already in you, that you've already experienced, where you've been masterful with serving someone. Like what environment can we create over this 6 months that gives you as much opportunity to explore that unique way, to find out what's in the way of it, to build the capacities around it. Because it's yes, there's definitely expertise that you can develop, but there's also just innate intuition that people can learn to tap into more and more, that knows how to serve someone.
Mhm. Yeah, and hearing that, what comes up for me is like serving someone at the end of the day is an act of love, you know, and like really coming to that place inside from which one can offer it, it's a gift not just to the other, but also to the one that's offering it, right? It's like um yeah, just having this image of, like, I read this quote recently by one of my favorite authors, Martin Pertel, and he was speaking about courting, but I feel like it's in a way connected to this. Was that courting is this thing where you sit next to someone and you discover what they love, and it's, yeah, there's something touching about that for me, and something touching of, like, oh yeah, like that's at the end of the day, like, what I'm here for with the people that I work with.
Yeah, appreciate you mentioning that. Makes me a little bit giddy and shy. As my heart starts to open a bit.
Mm-hmm. I feel that too. Mm.
Is this a
Mm.
good place to close, or yeah,
Mhm.
or do you have one last thing?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like there's something of really connecting to that preciousness of the moment, of oneself, of another. I started the conversation by saying, I don't even know where to begin. There's so many threads. And right now I feel like, oh, there it is. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the essence of what I'm leaving with, is yeah, just more and more of both the skill and also, I would say, like, just the trust and the surrender that allow us to touch that kind of preciousness that for me feels very healing. That's not just for the people that we serve, but also for ourselves.
Yeah, that was one of my reasons for doing this training, was because of how much I love coaching, because of how much I get from it, as well as like loving seeing people transform through my coaching. It's like I transform through it. I open and deepen, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels such a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. I love that. Again, the word integrity comes up, which is like, yeah, just something of, I'm coming into this space and I'm not contracted in my own idea of how I'm supposed to be serving somebody. But I'm actually coming into a space of, like, here I am, and I'm trusting life, and I'm trusting this moment, and I'm trusting myself, and I'm trusting you. And then from that place, I can support this person to connect to that within themselves. But, like, I can do that from a place where I'm there myself,
Right.
which feels different.
Yeah, and that's where it seems like common sense that in general, like the more of me that's online, the more of me that's going to be able to serve someone. It's like if I do have a capacity to serve someone, then it's better for me to be fully here and fully real.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is there another piece?
Mm. It's I'm not sure if it's a piece. It's just a feeling of joy right now, and yeah, a sense of being resourced from this conversation and connecting to the reason why I'm doing this work, and how much I care for it, and the importance of having space to nurture that, to take care of that in myself. Sometimes life can get very enticing and, like, oh, this is happening and then that's happening. And, and I feel like for me, it really helps to have that kind of space where I'm not just growing in my skill set and in my, and my humanness. But it's also like, oh, like I keep on having this place to return to and be nurtured by in my heart, in the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that the training has been an amazing space for that for me.
Puts me in touch with the other reason why I created this training, and it was because of the idea of wholeness, or the experience of wholeness, which, if I think of my kind of maturing over the last 15 years, it feels like I've started to orient to the world as like through a wholeness lens, or like the idea of wholeness suddenly started to permeate me as I
Mm.
joined the dots in my experience, and it's like, oh wow, this idea that I'm more in the driver's seat than I realized of what's going on, and I'm less victim to circumstance than I realized. It's like
Mhm.
there's so much liberation that comes with that, as well
Mhm.
as so much potential challenge.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But it really feels like a took kind of years of reorienting my life to that realization of yeah, how there's different parts in me that have got different ideas, and like, if I'm sabotaging myself, there's a reason why I'm sabotaging myself. I'm not victim to my own sabotaging. I am on
Mhm.
perspective, but for so long it was like I just felt like a victim to self-sabotage.
Mhm. Mhm. Mm. Mhm.
Yeah, starting to like join the dots over the years of like that self-sabotage is happening to protect me from this experience, and then
Mm.
suddenly realizing like, oh wow, yeah, I am scared of that, and then so it's like, oh. And then as I start to join those dots, it's really humbling because I'm more vulnerable than I like to think I was and realized. But then there's also scope to, it's kind of a win-win. It's one, I'm like, oh, I'm more whole than I realized. I'm not just a passive victim. But then I
Yeah.
also get to kind of still walk towards what I want,
Mhm.
which isn't to be self-sabotaged all the time. And through that inclusion of like the reasons, like getting the more whole picture of really what's going on in my psyche, then yeah, there's place for integration, and I did end up
Mm.
kind of achieving the things that I wanted to, but
Mm.
I got a lot more than that in the process because I kind of realized a much deeper way of how things work, and I also see that in others. And
Mm.
this training was wanting to explore that idea further for myself, and also to hopefully allow others to deepen into that understanding and experience of life.
Mhm. Mm. I love that. And what it brings up for me listening to you is like something about reclaiming agency. Like as you speak to, this parts that experience themselves as like victim to certain circumstances, or in for example the context of a client relationship, it's like, oh, the client is like this, and like, and that therefore of course I'm like that. And it's like, no, it's like, what's really happening here? And like somehow noticing all of these places that I might fall into this victim mindset of like, oh, my client is, for example, in their heads or something, and it's like, oh, that's actually a judgment that I am having. And why am I having that judgment is because there's like like a deeper vulnerability that's being touched for me here, where I start to disappear when somebody starts speaking faster, and reminds me of my childhood and things that happened there. And and starting to really slow down and see those parts, and bring more of that agency of an ownership that is like, this, there's nothing wrong that this person is doing. It's nothing like, oh, they're they're not showing up as they're supposed to for this to happen or something. It's no, it's my stuff. And like, in a way, the practice that it is to keep on coming back to that place, it's like, it's a pretty big thing also for oneself. I think for me personally has been, can be so confronting, but also so healing.
Right, and if we don't do that work, then we can end up certainly shaming our clients or getting into a kind of one-up position with them, and maybe kind of like just playing into a dynamic that that client is
Mhm.
vulnerable to.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
that hurts when I see, and obviously we all make mistakes, and I'm sure that happens with me. Well, I know it can happen with me, but it's painful to me where almost some forms of coaching kind of reify that kind of one-up position, or
Mhm. Yeah.
um, a taking responsibility for the client that isn't in accordance with our wholeness, let's say. Or it's like
Mhm. Mhm.
playing like the client has insecurities about where they are, so the coach says like, yeah, you need to do all these practices and that's going to solve it for you, and then the client thinks like, right, I've got to do this and I'm going to get from A to B, and then they start the practices but then they don't end up doing it, and then the coach says, oh, why didn't you do your practices, you should have done and they're kind of playing a bit of a parent role,
Yeah.
whereas actually if there's more trust in the client, and like there's just like a facilitation of the client getting more in touch with themselves, like they will find the energy to do the practices they want, or they will break through something where they no longer need to do those practices. Not that there's also a beautiful place for practices, as we went into in the course, but
Yeah.
there are kind of dynamics that can show up in coaching that just are perpetuating things.
Absolutely. And yeah, for me, what that touches on is there's something of freedom, and I feel, recently I was exposed to another coaching modality through a friend of mine, and she reached out with this like long questionnaire, and as I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, like there's no way I'm gonna fill this up, because it just when I looked at it and the way that things were framed, it was like, like it was so much about defining who you are. Oh, you're like this. Are you more like this or are you more like that? Oh, this, and like pages and pages of that. And I'm like, and at the end of the day, you are like this. And therefore we need to give you this kind of intervention. And I'm and I was just looking at that and I'm like, my movement is in the opposite direction. It's like I don't really need to be more defined. Like I'm here actually to free myself up of all of the things that I think I am, and to support others in doing that, and instead of reinforcing it, and just somehow have that, like you were saying earlier, like, oh, like maybe right now you might be experiencing something of the anxious attachment, in another moment like the avoidant part comes in or the secure part comes in, and that frame can be useful and it has its place, but it's not what it's about. It's
Right.
it's like there's that space behind it that's like, oh yeah, that's what's happening now. And it does not define who I am. And can we keep on practicing this together? Can we keep on practicing freeing each other up and ourselves up, um, from those stories and ideas of who we are?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm ready to end. Yeah. Yeah. That was, yeah, I really appreciate your sharing on this, and it's been awesome to have you in the training.
Thank you. It's been amazing to be part of it. And I'm excited for those who are going to join and learn with you as I have.
Thank you.